DMC stands for Disproportionate Minority Confinement and Disproportionate Minority Contact. Having an overrepresentation of young people of color in confinement means that those young people's life outcomes are seriously diminished, and that is why we as a society should care mightily about this.
We know that detaining a child in a detention facility who shouldn't be there can have a drastic effect on them later on down the line, on how they view the system, on how they view law enforcement, on how they view life in general. This is a way that us and law enforcement can actually have an impact.
When a nation is prepared to sacrifice any of its generations to a place of loss, you have seriously planted the seed for that nation's destruction. It is only the generations who come that can be the architects of what will be. We can give them the blueprint from whence we have come, but in their time, they must find new choices, new reason, rooted in the wisdom that comes from the past. And I think that that's what the Haywood Burns Institute does. It links the legacy of the past to the hope of the future.
The W. Haywood Burns Institute is a national nonprofit that helps jurisdictions across the country reduce racial and ethnic disparities in their youth justice systems. The most intensive engagement the Burns Institute offers involves guiding a collaboration of stakeholders through the Burns Institute approach each month for approximately 2 years. The collaboration minimally contains stakeholders that include judges, probation staff, prosecutors, indigent defenders, community members, parents, and law enforcement. A core value of the Burns Institute model is to involve communities with high juvenile detention rates in the collaboration. Parents and community members bring a unique perspective that stakeholders don't always have, which can be very instrumental in interpreting data and working to create alternatives to detention. Jurisdictions that are interested in working to reduce racial and ethnic disparities, but are not sure if they are ready for the most intensive level of engagement, often elect to have the Burns Institute conduct a Readiness Assessment Consultation, otherwise known as a RAC. The RAC determines a jurisdiction's readiness to undertake a serious effort to impact racial and ethnic disparities in their system. The RAC assesses local data capacity, policies and procedures, political will to identify and confront disparities, as well as the ability to form a functional collaborative. Since our inception in 2002, the Burns Institute has partnered with the NEEKC's Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative. Indeed, many of our core approaches complement JDAI by providing intentionality and focus on disparities. Recently, we have partnered with the MacArthur Foundation's Model for Change initiative to provide assistance to their core states and action networks as well. These foundations believe that our specific focus on disparities reduction is an important value added to their reform initiatives.
The most obvious thing that the Burns Institute brings to JDAI is a much more intentional and more sharply focused attention to the issue of racial disparities in the juvenile justice system. JDAI just doesn't work if there isn't collaboration across a broad range of stakeholders and between the system and the communities most affected by juvenile crime and by juvenile incarceration.
Many jurisdictions are under the impression that reducing racial and ethnic disparities in their juvenile justice system is an impossible task. They experience the problem of lots of motion, but very little movement.
Once you realize that there is a group of young people that are even more vulnerable to being detained unnecessarily, you then have to look at your work through another lens and develop an intentional focus on trying to uncover what it is about our public service, our public bureaucracy, that is not working for families and youth of color.
Change
that takes place in society takes place at all different levels. Many of the people who live in my district don't have a lot of ways and means. That said, they still have dignity and intelligence. And when you study that and you watch their children, you realize that yes, they make mistakes. But if we don't stand up for those families, if we don't stand up for those kids who find a pathway that gets them in trouble, then we're really going to be lacking in the future.
Our experience and intentional focus reveals that if a jurisdiction has the political will, drive, and dedication, the Burns Institute can provide the guidance to significantly impact the problem of racial and ethnic disparities. This is a solvable problem, and together we can create a fair and equitable justice system that lives up to the words written on the U.S. Supreme Court building facade: equal justice under law. We should never settle for anything less.